Okay. Hello, I'm here today with Mrs. Vassia Sarantopoulou, which is a founder of the Anti-Loneliness Psychological Care Center, a psychologist, and with Mrs. Helena Virk, who works as a psychologist at the Anti-Loneliness Center. We are here today to raise awareness on the importance of water and sanitation for the proper development of the child. We are going to see it's actually essential. Are you prepared to answer some questions for me, please, and to share your knowledge with the world?
Of course.
Of course. Thank you. So my first question is, how does the water and sanitation challenges affect the child's mental health?
Okay. So I think first of all it's important to think about what kind of mental health is. So it's basically about an individual realising their own abilities, their ability to cope with stress and life events, to be able to integrate, and this for children this is very important. It also impacts on their self-esteem and their kind of identity and self-worth. So if a child has good mental health and mental well-being, they're able to cope more and develop in an effective way. So if we think a little bit about water and sanitation, and if there's restrictions to that, if we think on a very basic level of needs, water, food, air are all basic needs for any human. And if this is something that's absent for a child, then that's going to impact on their ability to grow. Mm-hmm. And also, safety needs, the access to water and also sanitation. If that's not there, then there might be things to do with safety that might cause them stress. So for children, these needs are very important, because if they haven't got these very basic needs, it's very hard for them to develop in a psychological way and have good mental well-being. So it could impact them in a number of ways. They could feel anxiety, stress, shame about not having access to water or decent sanitation. And especially for girls, it's this is an important issue as well when they reach a certain time of their development. When they're menstruating, if they haven't got access to sanitation, this could also bring fears, embarrassment, shame as well.
Oh, I understand. That's a very interesting insight, and I reckon that children that do not have access to sanitation and safe water, they have problems with education.
Yes.
There is a risk of dropping out, and girls are targeted by this problem as they cannot take care of their hygienic needs. Mrs. Sarantopoulou, I would like to ask you, what are the effects of water quality, sanitation, and hand washing on the cognitive development of the child?
Some of the most severe consequences of lack of sanitation and water is infections and sickness. So you can imagine that children that they are subject to infections and sickness, they miss, according to research, they miss double the days, the school days, compared to their infection-free or sickness-free peers. So they miss more days at school. And you can imagine what this lack of education and information does for them and their cognitive development. Another important element is hydration. Our body is 60% water, and our brain is 75% consisted of water. So you can imagine that when we lack of hydration, then our cognitive functions, cognitive skills are impaired as well. And we're talking about memory, we're talking about concentration, we're talking about coordination functions, we're talking about information processing and motor speed. And that's very important for a child that goes to school. And as my colleague mentioned before about menstruation, when girls do not go at school because of embarrassment or because they lack of sanitation facilities in their school, they miss a lot of school days, they miss a lot of lessons, important lessons for their cognitive development, and at the same time I can mention one example of a country that has been a pioneer in that section, and that was Scotland,
Okay.
who is the first country that offers free sanitation products to girls because they don't want them to miss any day at school.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's important. It's important, and we think that there's no link, but there's a very strong link between water and sanitation and hygiene and the cognitive development of kids.
I understand. So there are so many important elements here, and probably the concentration of the kid also drops when he or she doesn't have access to water. It's
Of course. It's our brain is not working. It's not working properly because we lack, as we say, the basic.
okay. So we cannot develop properly without water, and it's a circle.
Yes, absolutely.
My last question is, what is the relation between poor access to water and social development and relationships creation for the child?
All this time that a family is spending in order to collect water and bring it back home is not spent in activities, is not spent in creating relationships, is not spent in friends, is not spent in family getting together and having meaningful conversations, is not spent in the spouses talking about important topics about their family. So how can we talk about friends when we are collecting water, or we need to go to a place far away from our house and bring water back home? So we cannot talk about social development because that's further down the line of the needs.
Okay.
At the same time, another aspect of it is, as we said before, consequently kids, they miss school because they don't have enough water, sanitation facilities, they get sick and they miss school. When they eventually go back to school, they have missed a lot of information. They have missed a big part of their education. And there's high possibility that they will be teased because of that. They will be bullied because of that. And they will be feeling left out, isolated, no friends. And then again we have the same result for kids, social isolation.
I see, that's a very interesting insight. So the lack of water and sanitation is closely interrelated with socio-economic development.
Yeah, absolutely. How can you talk about the social development of the family when actually you're lacking of water?
True.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you very much for taking this interview and for raising awareness for the United Nations World Water Day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you.